Ladies and gentlemen, it's your second week of good luck as we travel sideways into a realm that we always suspected was just out of reach. In this corner, reflecting the darkness in all of us, Ray Bradbury Theater, and the Challenger confirming for students everywhere the horrors of summer ghoul. Are you afraid of the dark? Up is down, left is right, and this is Put Up Your Spooks! This week's theme?
Mirrors, mirrors, mirrors.
We're through the looking glass, Jeffula, and things are awfully reflective over here.
We have a situation, which is, boy howdy, my episode was off-brand, sort of.
It wasn't spooky, but it was a good episode. Or is interesting,
yeah.
And there's other things to say about it.
My episode was actually an episode of Ray Bradbury Theater, which, to my memory, we have not yet done on the show.
No, I do not think so.
Welcome to the podcast, Ray Bradbury. Ryan, you are duty bound to include a clip of the intro and theme song.
People ask, where do you get your ideas? Well, right here.
In the beginning, he's like, this is my place, and this is my stuff. He has an inimitable voice, so I can't do it justice. And it's just the Bradbury building, so I love the idea that the Bradbury building belongs to Ray Bradbury. And he had, like, the Nautilus and shit all in there, so, like, all the most wonderful props from movie history were all belong to Ray Bradbury.
Yeah, I'd like to think that if you went to the Bradbury building, the offices are still full of knickknacks and weird.
They should at least have one office set aside in honor of Ray Bradbury, just in real life.
Have you been to the Bradbury building?
No, we've only peeked in from the outside, like late at night when it was closed, like several times. Every time we're downtown, we go to the Bradbury building and peek in.
I did get a chance to go inside not too long ago, and it's incredible in there. For those who may not know, the Bradbury Building is a famous architectural landmark in downtown Los Angeles that featured prominently in Blade Runner.
And zillions of other things.
So this episode of Ray Bradbury Theater is called...
that was his nickname in bed.
Badbury is his alter ego. This episode of Ray Bradbury Theater is called The Dwarf. What we would call a little person now. And there is an actual intro with Ray Bradbury talking about an early memory of the carnival where he got to meet clowns, jugglers, and little people. So, he's still on the right side of history. Nevertheless, I believe the episode title of The Dwarf has a double meaning, as we will see. We start off with Amy. She's a pretty young girl working at a carnival with Ralph, a creepy older guy with a real superiority complex.
Good Lord.
He's got a rifle and he's shooting at little paper targets, and he's bragging about how perfect he is. And he's like, one day, Amy, you're going to find out just how perfect I am. Perfect at everything, if you know what I mean. Yeah, gush. So then... Amy's not really feeling it, but he gets excited, and he's like, oh, Mr. Big's coming, Mr. Big's coming. And so he runs over to his podium where he mans the Hall of Mirrors, and a little person in a dark suit arrives and goes inside. And Ralph is like, every night this guy shows up at the same time. Come on, follow me. So he takes Amy backstage, and they watch through a peephole as the little person poses in front of a funhouse mirror that makes him appear bigger. And Mr. Big is there every night, and every night Ralph is there watching him.
This is rich. Every night, the same thing. Ain't it rich, Amy?
So Amy's intrigued, and so she decides to follow Mr. Big And she does, conveniently, to a newsstand, and she finds out that Mr. Big's real name just happens to be Mr. Bigelow, and he is a writer. So she buys one of his magazines, and I guess she stands out on the sidewalk all night and reads his stories or something, because he catches her following him, and he asked her why, and she's like, "Oh, I'm a fan." So even though, like, she just found out he's a writer, she's, like, read all his stories now. But he asks her to describe some of her favorite stories. And the theme we see in all these stories is that they're about him getting revenge on the people that bully him. So she introduces herself, and she's clearly a fan. So Mr. Bigelow brings her to an empty building in, like, a deserted part of town. And when they go in, there's a little house built inside. And he says he built it by hand. And inside this house, everything is to scale. So, everything is perfectly built for him. And he goes inside and starts, clacking away at the typewriter.
That was the night the beautiful giant lady came to the little house in the middle of nowhere.
So Amy is totally charmed and fascinated with Mr. Bigelow. And she decides to go back to the mirror maze. And she stares at herself in a mirror, and she's kind of getting sexy with it. She's like kind of playing with her hair and posing. And wouldn't you know it, Ralph is backstage peering through the people, and he is loving it because he has got the hots bad for Amy. And so she turns around, she knows he's there, and she says, "There's a rat in the walls." And he's like, "Ah, busted."
I bet he did.
And she asks him, and she asks him where to buy a funhouse mirror. He's like, "Yeah, Long Beach." So Amy says she's going to buy one. And she's like, "Yeah, I'm going to buy one of these funhouse mirrors. And that way, it'll be possible to look in it every night without having to deal with the rats in the walls." So Ralph realizes that, he's going to lose all his fun at Mr. Big's expense. And he also might lose Amy to Mr. Big, too. And he gets so furious that he's about to smash the funhouse mirror, and then he's like, "Nah, I got a better plan." So as soon as Amy orders the mirror for Mr. Big, Ralph swaggers on over and tells her, "It's no use. You can't win. I cannot be defeated. No one can beat me." Just then, Mr. B goes into the mirror house as usual, and then we hear his pitiful cry. He screams, and Amy runs in after him, only to find him cringing in front of a funhouse mirror that now makes him look smaller. So Mr. Big, he's clenching and waving his fist, but he's unable to vent his rage. And Ralph is loving it. He walks in and just kind of glares at Mr. Bigelow and loves that he feels so small and powerless. So Amy just whip cracks, smacks him hard in the face. But Ralph, he loves it even more. He just can't lose. Everything's coming at Ralph. So Mr. Big runs away. Ralph's loving it. But then Mr. Big comes back with a motherfucking rifle. That's right. Chekhov's guns are cock-locked and ready to rock. The very same rifles.
I don't think it was.
It was.
It was like a pump-action shotgun.
It was like a Winchester or something.
Because those were BB guns at the range. They must have been. Those carnival guns are like air rifles, right?
If you go back, or if you just remember extra hard, when in the beginning, Ralph is standing on the firing line, it's just like blow, blow, blow.
Oh, man.
He's just cycling rapid fire shots.
Talk about a dark carnival.
Yeah, and it's like, that's a really loud gun. But they kind of like hammered it home.
Yeah.
So that when this all goes down, the Hall of Mirrors is directly across from Amy's shooting range. So Mr. Big just runs out, grabs a rifle, and comes right back in.
Right.
He starts busting up the place. He shoots every image of Ralph that he can see, and then Amy stops him from shooting the real one. She explains,
"You've killed them all. The last one there, he's been dead for years."
Ralph stands there, humbled, mute, pathetic, impotent, while Mr. Bigelow runs off into the night. The end. I was watching the episode, and there's just a lot of weird spray paint and certain architectural details. And the faded title on the marquee of the building where Mr. Bigelow has his secret tiny house, I think it was all in French. So I think this was up in Canada.
Hey.
And it had a Canadian cast too.
Great, fantastic.
If we want to get into it, I think the reason why Amy is fascinated and charmed by Mr. Bigelow is because he's imagining himself as something more than what he is. And she's seems to be like a young girl working in the Midway, and she has enough sense of self to turn down Ralph's creepy advances, but Ralph makes it clear sooner or later he nails all the chicks that work there. And it's looking pretty grim for Amy, but Mr. Big, he dreams of something larger. He has aspirations. He's very creative, and after she hangs out with him and sees this kind of perfect tailored life he's made for himself in his tiny house, she goes back to the Hall of Mirrors, and she's looking at herself, and she's feeling pretty. She's feeling like she might be more than just like a simple teen girl stuck at a dead-end job, working carny games.
I thought it was lovely.
Yeah, I mean, Bradbury is the master. Unfortunately, I am not one of his illegitimate children, but you are.
You weren't there? You weren't there to be his bastard child?
And I was not there to be declared by Bradbury. Do you want to recap for the audience?
For those who didn't listen to that particular episode of 6 Demon Bag, it's one of the Comic-Con episodes, but we were at Comic-Con in a big hall where Ray Bradbury... Unfortunately, he was there with a bunch of D-bags who were adapting The Sound of Thunder as a movie. And they were like, we know Bradbury backwards and forwards, we get it. And they just made a shitty piece of garbage straight-to-video, horror movie or whatever. But anyway, at some point... It
was no Ray Bradbury Theater, I'll tell you that much.
It wasn't. This was much better, I guarantee. But yeah, at some point during that panel, Ray Bradbury declared us all his bastard children. And I carry it with me to this day. I'm
very jealous. This was back in the day when I wouldn't go into any panels or anything.
You're Ray Bradbury's bastard child. It's still good.
Yeah, still works. In miscellaneous notes, Amy was on an episode of X-Files. She was in an episode of Big Wolf on Campus.
Oh, shit. Never done it.
Which we love around here. She was also in Silver Bullet, the Stephen King movie.
Wow.
Which I tried to show to Ryan, and he tapped out immediately.
Don't remember.
It's got a kid in a wheelchair. It's got werewolves. It's got Gary Busey.
Ugh.
Based on a Stephen King story. Great movie.
Silver Bullet. The last glimmering hope.
And because this episode was poignant, but maybe a little lacking in the terror department, I found in her credits that she was also in a made-for-TV movie called Shattered If Your Kids Are on Drugs.
Oh, that's why you sent that link to me.
Yeah. So in this movie, which I highly recommend, it's a story about kids, it's a story about addiction, but it's framed much like The Midnight Society by Burt Reynolds and Judd Nelson, who are playing themselves.
And poorly, I might add.
So they roll up in a truck and just kind of watch kids smoke crack. It's amazing.
They're like damn teenagers. And then Judd Nelson's like, it's hard being a teenager. Sometimes you got to smoke crack. And Burt Reynolds is like, yeah, I guess. And then they drive away.
I mean, you get the feeling that they're both doing this as part of some kind of plea deal.
Community service.
Getting busted with cocaine.
This is like the play we did, Free to Be, in middle school, when it was all about like the dangers of drinking and smoking, and it was just as good acting-wise.
Yeah. Well, Amy takes place front and center as a would-be young crack whore.
I didn't recognize her. I watched them back to back.
Oh, well, there's a fantastic exchange where the kids are hanging out in the VW van with Dermot Mulrooney, who's trying to get them hooked on crack. And they're like, it's coke you can smoke, bro. It's awesome. It's awesome.
So Amy is the eventual result of the girl from drugs after she's been on drugs. She ends up going to work at the fucking carnival because she's ruined her life.
Yeah, you're 100% right.
Stay off drugs, kids. Ronald Reagan would be proud.
And by that logic, she then goes on to fight werewolves multiple times. So Amy's life goes from hopeful kid to crack addict to
bitter carny.
Sober carny worker and Mr. Bigelow fan. And then she takes her show on the road and starts wiping out werewolves.
That's the only place you can go from the carny life. Yeah. There's really no other options.
For those who see this episode, you'll probably recognize the actor that plays Ralph. He's this great Canadian character actor. He's just like classic creep.
Yeah.
And he was on A-Team, Knight Rider, MacGyver, Airwolf, Friday the 13th, the series. His credits run deep. Mad respect to Ralph.
When Mr. Big showed up, Ralph said, "Holy Magoli," which is totally something I would say. And so I was like, uh-oh.
Well, being
I'm a total
bastard.
Ralph. Yeah.
Being one of Bradbury's bastards.
Oh, maybe that's it. That makes me feel a little better. Ironically, I had to go through the mirror to find familiar territory. My episode this week is Are You Afraid of the Dark? The Tale of the Lonely Ghost. Sorry, all you Goosebumps fans. Although you got your shit last week, so stop complaining. Anyway, in the old Midnight Society, David, the little twerp, is lurking in the woods. He sneaks up on the beauty Kristen and gives her a fright. And she's like, "David, fuck you. Don't ever fucking do this again." And he's like, "I just got you a birthday present." And she's like, "Oh, that's sweet. But seriously, don't ever fucking do that again." And then she's like, "Let's go. I'll open this shit later." So over by the fire, Frank totally waterboards Eric. And I was like, oh my god, I can't believe that actor, because that was the actor that like walked out after season 1 over a contract dispute. I was like, I can't believe he allowed himself to be waterboarded during the episode. But
I guess if you put a cheese ball in with the water, it's technically not water. It's cheese ball boarding. A grape.
Great boarding, which sounds like a pleasant activity.
Yeah.
So then Eric like kind of slap fights Frank for a half a second, and then David is like, "Break it up, you guys," or whatever.
So I gotta say, this episode starts strong with the Frank and Kiki negativity. I don't know if like we're on a bit of a streak with Are You Afraid of the Dark, but like I started this episode thinking someone needs to just take a belt to these kids, not parents obviously, but one of the other people in the Midnight Society, because they are just like obnoxious, out of control bullies.
Yeah, I think their hearts are in the right place, but
well, I don't know about that, but it did set us up for the story very well.
It's really all it boils down to. So David then tells the story about people who don't get along. It's summer vacation, and Amanda, a young lady's parents, are on like an anthropology research trip. So she is sent to stay with her Aunt Dottie and her cousin Beth. Aunt Dottie has this lovely little recurring bit of business where she constantly fixes Amanda's shirt, and Amanda is constantly refixing it. So Aunt Dottie pulls Amanda's suitcase out, and it's chock full of books, which is another lovely indicator of character telling, not showing. Or rather, reverse, but this is Mirror World. Aunt Dottie calls for Beth to come help, but Beth full-on ignores her, staring daggers out her bedroom window at the mousy Amanda. Before they get inside, Amanda hears banging coming from the creepy abandoned house next door, and Aunt Dottie is just like, oh, don't worry, there's nothing out there, don't worry. And she frankly wishes she could burn it down, because as the real estate agent, it would do her a big favor, because nobody ever wants to buy it. And then they do this amazing dolly shot on the house, which is just a push-in, but it's cool. I liked it. I was like, ooh, it's simple but effective. Anyway.
Now, at this point, everything was in glaring broad daylight. Did it make your blood boil?
Harsh, bright daylight. That will come up later. Just you wait. So Beth is up in her room, and she's just shit-talking Amanda over the phone to her friends about her shitty, stupid clothes and her dumb face. But she hangs up right as Amanda and Aunt Dottie get to the room. And so Aunt Dottie leaves them alone, and Beth is like, you suck, and I hate you, and you can't hang out with us, and fuck off, sort my stuffed animals, don't rat me out for my crazy shenanigans. And Amanda's like, yeah, that's cool, I'll do all that stuff, no problem. And Beth is like, well, too bad, you still can't hang out with us, because you gotta prove you're not a Zeeb. And you still don't understand that reference. So the next episode...
This is my first exposure to Zeeb.
The next episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark we have to do is Laughing in the Dark. We got to get it out of the way because it informs so much of what comes after.
Okay.
Because somebody called somebody else a Zeeb in another episode that we did, or a Zebo or something. So Beth says... Also, if you want to hang out with us and me and my cool friends, you got to pass the initiation, which is spending a night in the haunted house next door. So later that night, Amanda is sitting alone in the hall, and she's narrating a letter to her parents out loud, which I do, and you do, I'm sure all of us do. It's like, she's like saying, "Dear Mom and Dad, everything doesn't suck here," etc. and so on. And then she hears Nanny.
I do it in a Civil War voice.
Dear Mom and Dad. You're of course a member of the Confederacy when you write letters. Everyone is. So she then hears Nanny sort of shuffling around, and Nanny is this old caretaker who used to take care of Beth and is still around because she has nowhere else to go. But Beth really fucking hates her. Nanny introduces herself to Amanda, and Amanda's just about to shake her hand, but Beth was just waiting just inside her bedroom door to bust out and scream about how much Nanny sucks and how disgusting and old she is, and Nanny runs away crying. Beth says there is something funny about Nanny and the haunted house next door. Speaking of which, tomorrow night is the initiation.
Pleasant dreams.
The next morning, Amanda passes Nanny on the stairs, and Nanny trips over her own feet and drops a locket, which Amanda is kind enough to pick up and give back to her. And meanwhile, in the kitchen, Beth is still raving about how she would rather Nanny die, and then she goes roller skating and says to Amanda,
"Don't touch my stuff."
That night, Beth and her friends are all sort of gathered around with Amanda at the haunted house, and they tell her the story of the ghost and how it was like a little girl who some bullies trapped in the room until she died, and like no one found her. I think she was deaf or dumb or something. Dumb meaning couldn't talk. So they send Amanda into the haunted house.
She really thinks we all did this.
So Amanda is in there sort of creeping around, and it's a cool place. Like, the fixtures are all kind of off the walls, and when she gets to an upstairs room, there's there's stains on the wall where, the shelves used to be and that were taken down. So I wonder if it was a real location they were using, or if the production design was just that good. Like, maybe it was because of things we'll see later. She gets into the upstairs room, and she hears a knocking from the mirror. And when she's kind of like looking towards that direction, she hears a scribbling, and when she turns aside, a word has been written on the wall that wasn't there before, and it's backwards. And when she looks into the mirror again, the word says, "Help me." And then a ghost appears in the mirror, and she freaks out and screams and runs away. And more shocking still, they did not do a Dutch angle on Amanda when she screamed. So the next morning, Amanda tells Aunt Dottie everything, and Beth is super pissed because Amanda promised she wouldn't snitch. And Aunt Dottie is super pissed because of the writing on the wall, so she makes them go and clean up the walls with like buckets and soap and stuff, and Beth is complaining the whole time. When they get over there, Beth says,
Give me a break. It's not even dark. You can't be scared now.
and of course I wasn't scared, but Amanda still was. So when they go upstairs, there's not just one message written on the wall, but like a trillion backwards help me's. And before they can even start cleaning, the mirror ripples and changes again, and this time they see like a lovely little girl's room filled with stuffed animals, which is Beth's only weakness. So she goes straight through the mirror, and then the ghost comes out. Amanda screams and tries to run away, but the door is locked. And so when I described this, when we did the tale of the door unlocked, I said that the bully girls like locked her in the room while she was like screaming and dying. I was wrong. Yeah. The ghost locks her in the room while she's screaming and dying. Sorry,
well, you made a lot of promises about this episode, but still a very effective sequence.
Yeah. Very scary. But then she screams herself out, and she's looks up, and the ghost is just standing there holding out a locket, and Amanda takes it, and there's a picture of a younger Nanny inside. So the ghost goes to the wall and writes another help me, which is forwards this time. And Amanda's like, oh, Nanny's your mom? I'll go get her. Let me go. I'll go get her. So the ghost like unlocks the door with her ghost powers. Amanda runs away to find Nanny, who is about to mope away in a cab forever. And then Amanda drags Nanny back to the haunted house, even though Nanny is like mental and just going to have a heart attack from the bad memories. When they get into the room, the ghost comes out, and she and Nanny reunite, and is actually very touching. I choked up a little because I'm like really susceptible these days. Any little heartfelt thing gets me going. Not gets me going, gets me. And the two of them, Nanny and the little girl ghost, go back into the mirror, and then Nanny's young again. They're in the 60s or whatever, and Nanny fixes the ghost girl's shirt, and then they go out the door, and then as soon as they go out the door, Beth comes out from the corner. She was like spying on this ghost reunion. She's banging on the mirror, help, you gotta let me out of here. But the mirror world vanishes and only reflects the real world room. So she's still like, you can still hear her calling for help from inside the mirror, and just then Beth's friends all appear. And Amanda tells Beth not to be such a piece of shit anymore, not to treat her friends like shit anymore. And then Beth promises, and Amanda opens the door. Beth spills out onto the floor, and her friends are like,
You know, Beth, I think we're going to have to make some changes in this group.
And then they kill her. Then, back at the Midnight Society, Frank and Eric are friends, and everyone else leaves, except for Kristen, who has totally forgotten her stupid birthday present, but David calls her back. She opens the present. It's a creepy locket, just like in his story. He then builds a narrative in his head where they are in love and together forever, and that is the scariest story of all. The end.
So my notes for this episode are 5 words long. And it is prison rules, deck that bitch.
We're talking about Beth?
We're talking about Beth. We're talking about her cousin Amanda.
Oof.
First of all, just the idea that, okay, from cousin Beth's point of view, your mom is like, hey, your cousin's going to be staying the entire summer in your bedroom. And the first thing she does is just rips into her. And it's like, don't talk to me. Don't touch my stuff.
Don't touch my stuff.
I hate you. You're a Zeeb. Like, that person sleeps 5 inches from your bed and will for the next conceivable 3 months. Like, get off on a good foot. But for Amanda, you know, she tried to like make nice. She's like a nice nerdy child of
Bookish
anthropologists. And you know, it was clear that she was going to get steamrolled, and it was just prison rules. She needed to assert her dominance and just crack cousin Beth in the face right off.
Yeah, I suppose that would have been effective.
So, mad props to the ghost and the way it was filmed. Did you ever see that film, The Orphanage?
Yeah, I did, although I have quite forgotten it.
It has a sort of very specific vibe that's sort of bordering on J-horror.
Mm-hmm.
Like when the pale girl with the limp black hair and like the plain linen dress appears in the mirror and then steps out, and she's holding out her arm and she's scrawling on the walls. Like, it definitely had like a grown up horror vibe to it.
It was great. When she first appeared in the mirror, even though I've seen it a million times, although I'd obviously forgotten a very important plot point, when she first appeared in the mirror in that low light lit from below, I got a genuine chill today watching it.
Yeah.
I was like,
it
wow.
was really effective.
Yeah.
And actually, what's kind of interesting about that scene is that so much of that episode, you know, you lose a bit on the front end and back end for the Midnight Society, and then you have, you know, we talk about turbo plots a lot because they usually jump into the weird unexplained events. This one was all about the cousin and the family and the nanny and setting it up. The actual time you get with the ghost is very, very little.
Yeah, minimal.
But like pound for pound, a really scary sequence. It really delivered. The ghost is only on screen twice.
Yeah.
Whereas any other episode we do, the ghost is like, you know, a constant.
Oh yeah. I thought their performances were quite lovely all around, especially Nanny. Her performance is absolutely heartbreaking. Unfortunately, they were all brought extremely low by the horrendous acting of Beth, the bully cousin.
I agree. Nanny was really good, and the little girl, who didn't have any lines because she was mute. Ghost Girl, she was great.
So, a lot of crazy connections in this episode. I don't know if you noticed this, but Nanny is one of the crazy witches from Watcher's Woods.
Whoa, that's awesome.
Yeah. So she can do it all. She's got range.
But is this canon?
She's double ghost.
Because she went to Watcher's Woods to become a ghost witch, but then she got freed, but she's crazy with a ghost daughter. And
Yeah. It's not canon because they're, serial episodes. They're different stories that the kids are telling. Although sometimes they do connect. Like, there's always Dr. Vinks and Sardo's. But as much as I was just complaining about the same actor playing different characters, it's okay when they're literally telling a story that's from a different kid and a different, blah, blah, blah. I'm willing to buy that one. And also, she was under heavy makeup as Watcher's Woods Witch.
Very heavy makeup, to the point where I thought some of them were men in drag.
Yeah, I think it was probably her that you were thinking of. No offense. So, more Quasi connections. Amanda, the main girl in this episode, was also in the Are You Afraid of the Dark reboot that we did as the mom from the flashback.
Right.
And I think that the actress who played the present-day mom in the reboot must have watched only this episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark and seen Aunt Dottie and decided that that's how mothers in all Are You Afraid of the Dark must act. Because they had that same manic, goofy energy.
All right, you want to get into some ratings?
Always.
For this episode, The Dwarf, body count 0, scare factor 0. I don't know if Ray Bradbury Theater gets like the dark whimsy factor or something.
Dark whimsy factor still low because there really was nothing magical going on. Those sequences in the mirror, were quite lovely and lyrical, but
I'll give it a goose egg for that. Gross factor, I'd say mild for Ralph.
Yeah, he's a little ecchi.
Theme, very high.
Oh yeah, Hall of Mirrors, for crying out loud.
Because you got a house of mirrors, and it's all about staring into mirrors, buying mirrors, swapping mirrors,
although
shooting
these mirrors
mirrors.
don't reflect the truth until they do.
Totally 80s. I think we had a good representation with some teased up hair and leather jackets and studded belts.
I really do get more of a hella 90s vibe off Amy, especially. Like, she would have been right at home in an episode of Beverly Hills 90210.
Fair. There's always a bit of spillover from late 80s to early 90s,
Yeah,
but this was shot in the late 80s.
It doesn't matter if it doesn't have that iconography. I mean, it could be shot in the late 80s and take place in the 50s, and we would give it a totally 80s factor.
What the factor? The tiny house was legitimately surprising.
Yeah, and awesome, too. I quite enjoyed it. Although, why would he do that to himself? Why would he put himself through that? His parents put him through that.
I guess he was more comfortable that way. I'm not sure, because it never comes back again, which is very weird.
Never burns
we
it
can get
down.
into that later. Lesson learned, don't stock your Midway with real rifles.
Oh, definitely don't do that. And also, believe in yourself?
I think it's more important not to put real rifles in the Midway.
You like them military operations, Amy?
Okay. Are You Afraid of the Dark? Tale of the Lonely Ghost. Body count, 1.
Yeah, we did not see her die, but we certainly saw the after effects.
No, I'm talking about Nanny.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
She
okay.
straight up went into the ghosty Mirrorverse. Unless she can come back out.
I don't think she can. She can come out as a ghost. But I think once they're reunited, that portal is closed.
Scare factor, high, I would say.
Not even like judging it by kid show standards.
No. Yeah, legit scare. Gross factor, 0.
0.
Theme. I think this is where it suffers.
Yeah, I mean, there's a mirror. There is a mirror, and, the mirror is the conduit between the worlds.
But it's not like the girl that died was mocked for being ugly, or it's not like she broke the mirror. Like, it's a tale of cruelty and neglect. It's not about, like, truth or beauty or things like that.
Yeah, interesting.
So it's kind of random that this ghost is in the mirror. Now, there were parallels between what Cousin Beth was doing to Amanda and what happened to the ghost girl.
But then you'd need to be some kind of parallelogram.
Hella 90s?
Oh, my God. Did you see Beth's hair? Now that was 90s hair.
Yeah, there's a lot of top ponies.
Straight up bangs that go like 4 inches in the air. There was a girl in my karate class that had straight up bangs that went 4 inches in the air, and had such a crush on her.
What the factor? I'd say medium high. I don't know why the ghost was in the mirror. Sucking a living person into the mirror to be a ghost with you is, kind of strange. The fact that Cousin Beth was trapped in the ghost mirror, but all they had to do was open the closet door and let her out.
Well, that was
very strange.
After the portal closed, she got beamed back. They couldn't have opened the window before the ghosts were reunited, or before Nanny and her daughter were reunited. If they had opened that door, there just would have been nothing in there.
But would you agree that the what the factor is decent in this one?
I would say, sure. Whatever gets me the win. Whatever gets me that big W.
And lesson learned, prison rules. On the first day, you got to find the biggest person and take them down a notch.
Definitely.
And that's what Amanda should have done.
Now, there was
Cousin Beth.
There was 2 potential time to kryptonites in this episode.
I was looking, and I didn't really see anything, but go ahead.
The one potential kryptonite is the locket, which is the key to setting the ghost at peace. Although it's not really a bad kind of kryptonite. It's more like a yellow kryptonite? I don't know the different kinds of kryptonite. And then the other potential kryptonite is the stuffies. The stuffed animals, which are Beth's kryptonite,
the stuffed animals
which allow her to
were
get
Beth's kryptonite.
Yeah.
Although it put her in a bind, but the thing that really destroyed Beth was being stuck in the mirror and having her friends see her helpless. And
yeah, so mirrors are Beth's
that
kryptonite.
Status shift.
Theme of mirrors high.
So, all except for theme, I'm going to give this one to Are You Afraid of the Dark on a silver platter. I would like to try to break the episode of Ray Bradbury Theater. How would you have made that spooky? Because I was thinking, like, obviously, if Mr. Big had gotten magically enlarged somehow.
Yeah.
But I wonder if that would have been out of their budget.
Something could have led to Mr. Big's death.
Oh, and he maybe could have haunted. Okay, yes. So at one point, Ralph is like, I'm getting bored just spying on Mr. Big. I need to kick it up a notch. I'm going to like give him a hot foot or give him a scare. If he'd given him like a heart attack or something, or like locked him inside the House of Mirrors, and he died and then haunted the mirrors, and then he could have been big inside the mirrors and stuff. Yeah, you know what? I think that's the way to do it. Or like some kind of swap. You know, they could have maybe trapped Ralph inside the mirrors. It's sort of like, as a voyeur, it's sort of his paradise, but to make it a prison.
Oh, yeah. Or turned him upside down and put him on a meat scale and said, watch out, butcher, don't get your thumb on.
When all is said and done, I think you actually hit upon it very, very early on.
It's kind of the obvious choice.
It wasn't obvious to me. I thought the obvious choice would be to shrink Ralph, but again,
But you're a monster.
That would be poor taste. Yeah. You know, I'm thinking 80s horror anthology logic.
Help me. Oh, yeah. Oh, God. We're out. We're out of the mirror.
You run for your lives.